my lectures are going to start from module 2 because these are meant for somewhat advanced users in the final year of a chemical engineering undergraduate program or maybe first year of a graduate program of chemical engineering. Well, here we begin with fundamentals of vector spaces. So what are the learning objectives? So first thing is I would like to understand two fundamental operations, vector addition and scalar multiplication, and see how these operations hold in any vector space. What do I mean by any vector space? I am going to define sets which are called as vector spaces where these two operations hold, and these sets are going to be other than the familiar 3-dimensional vector spaces. For example, I would introduce set of continuous functions over some domain, say 0 to 1, or I might start talking about a set of continuous functions over 0 to infinity. These kind of functions, these kind of sets arise when we are solving differential equations, partial differential equations, and if you have understanding, basic understanding or of the geometric understanding of these underlying spaces, then it is much easier to develop the solutions for these kind of equations. So we are going to look at these abstract notions of vector space and generalized vector spaces like function spaces. So a vector in this vector space is a function. For example, set of all continuous functions over 0 to 2 pi, okay, and say sin x is a vector in this set, or cos x or cos 2x is a vector in this set of continuous functions. Well, another vector could be just a line a plus bt defined over 0 to 2 pi and so on, or some polynomial defined over 0 to 2 pi. So these sets are generalized sets, not just 3-dimensional vector spaces that you are familiar with, and what we will study in this particular module as how these sets too qualify to be called as vector spaces, and how the geometric ideas that hold in 3 dimensions can be extended to these higher dimensional spaces. So we will go on to generalize the concepts such as subspace, such as linear dependence, such as span of vectors, what is the basis in a vector space and so on, and we will examine examples of different sets that qualify to be vector spaces or that qualify to be subspace of a vector space and so on. So this is beginning of the geometric generalization. This grand geometric generalization was carried out probably 60, 70, 80, 100 years back in the domain of mathematics, and if you have some idea about these generalizations, then it becomes very easy to understand underlying foundations of numerical analysis. So that is why first few lectures are going to be devoted to understanding these generalized sets. Well, when we work in a 3-dimensional vector space, what are the things that you actually need? Well, we need, when you work with vectors, we need to know about length of the vector, okay. So when you move on to generalized vector spaces, we define something called norm of a vector, which could be viewed as a generalization of concept of length of a vector. So we are going to distill out essential properties that define length in 3 dimensions and generalize them to this concept of norms. Is there a unique way of defining a norm? What we will find out is that a norm can be defined in multiple ways, okay. The way we define the so called length in 3 dimensions is one way of defining norm, it is a special case. Now it is good to do visualizations in 3 dimensions or 2 dimensions, one can do visualizations, and maybe if you understand visualizations in 2 and 3 dimensions, then you might be at least able to do some imagination and or extend your imagination to see what is happening in a higher dimensional space or a function space. So that is what we are going to look at in this part. Well, when you are dealing with numerical analysis, a thing that you have to you invariably encounter is convergence of a numerical scheme. So we have to understand whether a particular, we start with a guess solution and we construct a new solution from a initial solution. So whether this sequence of vectors that you get in the process of generating approximate solutions, is it converging to some point? Is it going to somewhere? Is it going somewhere in the same space? We need to examine this thoroughly when it comes to understanding numerical behavior of solutions. So in abstract terms, we are going to look at sequences of vectors, okay, and we also have to talk about convergence. In fact, when you have to talk of convergence of vectors, we have to talk of nearness of two vectors, and if you want to talk of nearness of two vectors, you have to find out distance between the two vectors, and this is where the concept of norm becomes very vital. So the ideas that you use in 3 dimensions need to be generalized to higher dimensions. Well, we will look at very briefly at the concept of a normed space, that means a space on which a norm is defined. So, and we will also have we will also understand very briefly what are called as Banach spaces or the complete normed spaces. Well, these spaces you may not encounter later, the concept of Banach space may not be required throughout the course, but it's good to have understanding of this idea when we start looking at when you start generalizing the concept of a vector space. The most important concept that we use in 3 dimensions when we do geometry in 3 dimensions is orthogonality. Okay, we like to work with orthogonal sets. We like to work with coordinate definitions which are orthogonal to each other, x, y, z, or coordinates that we normally take are is a orthogonal coordinate system. So orthogonality that is so useful in 3 dimensions is also useful when it goes to other spaces like function spaces. Okay, so we need to generalize the concept of orthogonality to higher dimensional spaces, to other spaces, and this is done through what is called as inner products. So we are going to define a special class of spaces, vector spaces, called as inner product spaces. Okay, that is a vector space, a set of objects on which an inner product is defined. Well, when it comes to a 3 dimensional space, all of you would be familiar with a dot product. Okay, so when I am generalizing the idea of vector space from 3 dimensions to some other some other sets which are more general sets, I also would like to have ideas which are similar to a dot product. Okay, so this inner product is going to give me something similar to a dot product. In fact, what we will see is that dot product is one way of defining an inner product. So inner product is a generalization, is a grand generalization which will help us to generalize the concepts of orthogonality, orthogonal vectors in general spaces, function spaces, and so on. So we are going to look at inner product spaces. Inner product spaces are generalization of 3 dimensional vector spaces with dot product defined in them. So we are very familiar with dot product. We use dot product to define angle between 2 vectors in 3 dimensions, and when we move on to more general spaces, set of functions, set of polynomials, we need this concept, we need something like dot product which is going to be this inner product in these spaces. So we are going to look at variety of inner product spaces. So there are different ways of defining inner product, not only one way. In 3-dimensional space you only know one way of defining an inner product, but there are other ways of defining inner products, and we will look at those different methods of defining inner products. Well, one of the fundamental equation that we use in 3 dimensions is that cos theta, angle between any two vectors, is dot product of two unit vectors in two directions. So if I have a vector A and B, I find out unit vectors along A, I find a unit vector along B, and then I take a dot product which gives me cos theta between A and B. A generalization of this particular concept in inner product spaces is nothing but the so called Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. The name Cauchy-Schwarz inequality might sound very intimidating, but this is a very fundamental result in inner product spaces, and it will help us to define angle between two vectors. So here a vector, as I said, is going to be a function, and then we need to talk about orthogonal functions. Okay, so see, you might have come across some statements in your undergraduate education saying that sin theta, sin 2 theta, sin 3 theta, these are orthogonal to each other. Why they are orthogonal? Okay, so if you understand the concept of inner products and inner product spaces, this will no longer be a mystery. Okay, so generalization of concept of angle between any two vectors is achieved through inner product, and then the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality is a fundamental inequality which is nothing but generalization of the fact that cos theta is dot product of two vectors through unit vectors in 3 dimensions. Okay, so we are going to study this Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, then we will look at variety of orthogonal or orthonormal sets that are very often used in numeric analysis. For example, Legendre polynomial or a Laguerre polynomial. Now these names we encountered in maths courses, and often we do not know why they are called orthogonal sets or why they are called as orthogonal polynomials. If you start from fundamentals of vector spaces, you will get in-depth understanding as why these sets are called as orthogonal sets. Well, it is not always that you have a set of vectors which are orthogonal. Okay, but if you have a non-orthogonal set of vectors, then one can systematically construct a set of vectors that is orthogonal. For example, in 3 dimensions, you may have come across this method called Gram-Schmidt orthogonalization. Okay, which is you start with 3 vectors which are not orthogonal, and starting from these vectors one can systematically construct 3 new vectors which are orthogonal to each other. Okay, so constructing an orthogonal set from a non-orthogonal set, this process is called Gram-Schmidt orthogonalization, and this we are going to study in a general inner product space. It will be very useful to get again insight into how different orthogonal sets are developed, and then we will look at examples of generating orthogonal sets starting from non-orthogonal sets. So from inner product spaces we then move on to the third module. Now this is going to be a very important module in this course, I would say heart of this course. How do you discretize a problem using approximation theory? So as I told you in the beginning, it is often not possible to solve a given problem in its original form. Most of the times the problem that you have is not a linear, which means it could consist of non-linear algebraic equations, non-linear differential equations, non-linear partial differential equations. Well, when you have linear differential equations, linear partial differential equations, you can many times construct solutions analytically, at least for some idealized situations. This becomes very difficult, even if there are slight non-linearities and it may not be possible to have analytical solutions. this means you have to construct numerical solutions. To construct numerical solutions, we have to first transform into standard forms. See, this is because we do not have tools to solve all kinds of problems. We can only tackle certain types of equation forms. So first step is to convert a given problem into a problem which can be tackled using standard tools, okay, and then we attack the problem to construct a solution, okay. So by hook or crook, by some means, by using multiple ideas together from approximation theory, we actually transform the problem to a computable form. Is there a unique way of doing this? Obviously not. A given problem can be transformed into a computable form by a variety of means, and if you have to choose between different means of transformation, you have to have in-depth understanding of how these transformations are done. Why do you choose one over the other? Whether I should use Taylor series approximation or whether I should use interpolation. Unless you know the foundations, it is difficult to make these choices. So it's good to have a basis, a foundation of the approximation theory. This step of model transformation is often referred to as problem discretization, and in this module, in this set of lectures, we are going to look at popular approaches that are available in the literature for approximations or approximate a given problem to computable forms. So first thing that I want to do here before I begin this transformation is to show that actually different problems that you encounter in numerical analysis, they are only seemingly different. Once you start viewing these problems from the viewpoint of vector spaces, generalized vector spaces, they do not really appear different problems. One can come up with a grand generalization that there is a one single problem. Well, in a particular vector space, this problem will be called as set of algebraic equations. In a particular vector space, in another kind of vector space, a similar problem will be called as solving differential equations, initial value problems. In some other vector space, this problem will be called as a problem which is partial differential equation. Okay. So if you understand this grand generalization very briefly, then it helps us to develop discretization in a better way into the computable forms. So basic problem you can show is that is nothing but operator operating on a vector giving another vector, and there are three problems associated with this fundamental equation. Is either given the operator and a vector, find the solution. So given operator say t operating on a vector x, find y. The second problem that you encounter is given operator t and y, find x. That means I know the solution, I know the effect, I want to find out the cause. So operator t, when it operates on x, gives me y. I know y, I know t, I want to find out x. These are called as inverse problems. The first problem, where you look at or you are given operator and you are given x, you find out y, is called as direct problems. Our course is mostly going to be dealing with inverse problems, that is, given an operator operating on a vector and you are given y, the effect, then you want to find out cause, that is x. Then we will look at specific tools that are used in problem approximation. What it turns out is that the backbone of approximation is approximating a given function using a set of polynomials. Okay, there is a fundamental theorem in approximation theory called as Weierstrass approximation theorem, and this lays the foundation of all the problem discretization methods that are used in numerical analysis. Okay. So this particular theorem states that any continuous function over a finite domain can be approximated with arbitrary degree of accuracy using a set of polynomials. Okay. So it does not tell you which polynomial to use, it just tells you existence of such a polynomial approximation. Well, it is up to us to construct the polynomial approximations, but the study of Weierstrass theorems very briefly will give you the foundation of how this whole business is done of approximating or transforming a problem, original problem, into a computable form. So we will just very briefly look at Weierstrass approximation theorem, and then we will one by one start looking at commonly used polynomial approximations. Okay. So which is the most commonly used polynomial approximation? As I said, the most commonly used polynomial approximation is Taylor series approximation. So this is used in variety of numerical tools. For example, for solving or developing this method called method of finite difference. Method of finite difference is used for discretization of ordinary differential equations, boundary value problems, ODE, BVP. They get transformed into set of algebraic equations. This method is also used for transforming partial differential equations into set of algebraic equations. Okay. So we will also study this method in a different context. For example, you probably are familiar with Newton's method, or sometimes called as Newton-Raphson method, for solving nonlinear algebraic equations, and again this method originates from Taylor series approximation, that is approximating a nonlinear differential equation or nonlinear set of equations locally using Taylor series, and then converting into a sequence of linear algebraic equation problems. So we will look at Taylor series approximation as a fundamental tool and how it is applied to do problem transformations, a variety of problem transformations, transforming a partial differential equation, transforming a boundary value problem, transforming set of nonlinear algebraic equations. Then we continue our journey into other type of approximation. The second most important, or not second most important, equally important approximation is polynomial interpolations. So in the beginning we will have a brief understanding of Lagrange interpolation. Well, it's a vast area, and then we cannot do justice to every aspect of interpolation. I am just going to give you a brief introduction to some important concepts. So we will begin with Lagrange interpolation, we will move on to piecewise polynomial approximations or interpolations, or not approximations, piecewise polynomial interpolations, and then we will also look at not just polynomial interpolations, we will also look at function interpolations. Okay. So linearly independent functions are used to construct interpolating functions, and then we will look at problem discretization using this approach. So I am going to again look at a boundary value problem, ordinary differential equation boundary value problem, and discretize it using interpolation polynomials, or I am going to discretize a boundary value, a partial differential equation using interpolation polynomial. So this is my next task, that is study how interpolation plays a role in problem discretization. In particular, we are going to look at this method of orthogonal collocations, which is a very powerful method used in solving variety of chemical engineering problems, and then have a brief probably look at orthogonal collocations on finite elements. So the third important tool or third important approach that is used for problem discretization is least squares. So we are going to study various ways of approximating problems using method of least squares. first we will develop analytical solution of linear least square problem. Okay, look at its geometric interpretations. This will give us insight that is very valuable, that can be extended when we understand approximations in higher dimensional spaces, and then we will actually extend this idea to general spaces or general Hilbert spaces. So the fundamental to this least square approximation is the idea of projections. Now projections we normally study in engineering drawing, or we study projections even starting at a school where you want to project, find the nearest point in a plane from a given point outside the plane. So projections are very important, and how do these idea of projections is used in the problem approximation is what we want to study next. So we will also have a brief peek at function approximation based models and the formulation of the parameter estimation problem, and in this, before we move on to the main the remaining part, that is understanding the tools, we will also look at least square problems for linear in parameter models, least square formulation for nonlinear in parameter models. So in particular we are going to look at a method called Gauss-Newton method. So this Gauss-Newton method is a combination of least squares and Taylor series. So we will look at this Taylor series approximation and least square approximation. So we are going to look at this method and then finally move to problem transformations, which we have been already looking at, that is how do you transform a boundary value problem, or how do you discretize a partial differential equation using method of least squares. So these methods are known as method of minimum residual methods. So a popular method in this class is Galerkin method, and we'll study this method. Actually the discretization of ordinary differential equations, boundary value problems or partial differential equations using least square approach leads to the so called finite element methods. We will not go in depth into this, but we will have a very brief introduction to what is this animal finite element method using and how it is related to least square approximations. So with this we will come to an end of our module, which talks about problem transformations. So this will almost we come to half of the course. Now what remains to be done is attack the problems which are transformed. Before that we will very briefly look at what are the errors that come up in problem transformations, and what are the approximation errors, and what is bearing on the solutions, numerical solutions. So after having done this, after having transformed the problem, now we begin our journey into tools. Okay, the first tool that we are going to look at is solving linear algebraic equations, and here, well, you might wonder, we have been solving linear algebraic equations since school days, what's so new about it, what am I going to learn about it? Maybe you are already familiar with Gaussian elimination, and then in Gaussian elimination you may have studied even some advanced things like when how to do pivoting and so on, but there is much more to linear equation solving than just Gaussian elimination. There are many other methods, there are iterative methods for solving linear algebraic equations, and we are going to have look at them. Even optimization methods based methods or numerical optimization based methods are used to solve linear algebraic equations, and we will be studying those equations. But apart from studying these numerical schemes, I am going to discuss one very important thing here, that is matrix conditioning. Matrix conditioning talks about how well posed or how ill posed a given problem is, a given set of linear equations are, and then that gives you insight into behavior of the numerical solution. It may happen that you have a ill posed problem and then the solution that you compute numerically is not quite reliable. You should be able to differentiate between ill posed problem and not reliable solution and well posed problem but mistake that you have made in computing the solution. Okay. So this is possible using the concept of condition numbers or matrix conditioning, and we are going to have a look at these the concept of condition numbers as a part of this module. So we will begin with the study of conditions for existence of solutions for linear algebraic equations. We move on to the geometric interpretation of the solutions, very important. So I will look at the problem through two pictures, a row picture and a column picture. We'll look at the solution from two different viewpoints, geometric viewpoints. We'll interpret what is the meaning of a singular matrix geometrically, and here essentially in the beginning we'll just have some understanding of four fundamental subspaces associated with a matrix: row space, column space, null space, and left null space. So up to now we were not talking about any numerical scheme, or solution scheme. We were talking about problem transformation, and just now I started about solving linear algebraic equations, but even in the beginning I am talking about geometric ideas, and now we will move into numerical schemes. Okay, this is the first time in this course we will be encountering actual numerical schemes. So first, of course, I am going to look at Gaussian elimination very briefly and LU decomposition, and we'll spend some time on the number of computations that are required in carrying out a Gaussian elimination process, and see whether there are methods that can even improve, that can even reduce the number of computations. So the main focus in this part is going to be introduction to the iterative methods, but before that we will look at some special methods for solving linear algebraic equations, and these are going to be called methods for sparse linear systems. So many problems have very nice structure. Sparse systems are one in which lot of elements are zeros and there are only few non-zero elements in a big matrix. In solving problems which are large scale, let us say you are doing simulation of a section of a plant, you may have thousands of equations, and when you actually start solving them, let us say by Newton's method, you linearize them. When you linearize them, you get linear set of equations which are say 1000 cross 1000 or 10,000 cross 10,000, but this matrix which is 10,000 cross 10,000 may not be fully populated, it will have many zeros, and it is possible to take advantage of this structure and then come up with special schemes. So these are called as schemes for sparse linear systems, and we are going to look at just few of them. It's an iceberg and we can only touch the tip of the iceberg. So I am going to look at block diagonal matrices. I am going to present the Thomas algorithm for the tridiagonal matrices and block tridiagonal matrices. We'll look at triangular matrices and block triangular matrices, but as I said, this is only a brief introduction, and we are going to move on to the iterative schemes. The main thing here is to familiarize you with the notion of sparse matrices, and then maybe when you encounter them you will remember to use them in your application. The study of iterative solutions or solving linear algebraic equations using iterative solution scheme is the next component that we will look at. So there are a variety of iterative schemes. You start with a guess solution and then you iteratively refine the solution, and finally you approach the true solution. This is the iterative approach, and this we are going to study different methods. Very popular methods in this category are Jacobi method or Gauss-Seidel method or the relaxation method. So we will study these methods, their algorithms, but more importantly we will study the convergence analysis of these iterative schemes. I am going to spend quite a bit of time in understanding the convergence of these schemes. The question is, if I start with a particular guess, what is the guarantee that the solution iterative scheme will converge to the solution of solving linear algebraic equations? So that will be analyzed systematically using concept of eigenvalues, and we will see the role of eigenvalues in speed of convergence or the convergence itself, and then we will look at some special form of matrices that enhance convergence. We then move on to optimization based schemes for solving linear algebraic equations. Okay. So here I am going to use a numerical optimization tool such as gradient search method or conjugate gradient method to solve set of linear algebraic equations, that is solving Ax equal to b is going to be done using optimization. It turns out that in many situations this can be a very fast tool, particularly when you are solving large set of equations. And in the end of this module I am going to present the concept of matrix conditioning or condition number of a matrix and its relationship with behavior of numerical solutions of linear algebraic equations. So we will end with a deeper understanding into how good or how bad a numerical solution is, and we will associate that with the conditioning of the matrix. We then move on to the next tool. The next tool that I am going to study is going to be solving nonlinear algebraic equation. So in this toolbox, well, nonlinear equations are more often encountered than the real equations. Most of the real engineering problems or real engineering models consist of nonlinear coupled equations. You do not have them in single variables, you have multiple variables which are coupled, which give rise to coupled nonlinear algebraic equations. If you are modeling a section of a plant and understanding the steady state behavior of energy and material balance, it might be thousands of coupled nonlinear algebraic equations that need to be solved simultaneously. That is very, very important. In this method, in this particular module, we will look at variety of iterative methods that are used for solving nonlinear algebraic equations. Okay. In the end, we will also have a brief introduction to the convergence analysis of these methods based on a famous principle in function analysis called as contraction mapping principle. So again, this is just a brief introduction to tell you that what goes in understanding the convergence analysis of this scheme. So we will begin with the method of successive substitutions. This is one of the very preliminary method which is used. These are derivative free methods. So there are a variety of derivative free methods like Jacobi iterations or Gauss-Seidel iterations or relaxation iterations. We will study these methods, and then from this we will move on to derivative based iterative methods. The well known derivative based iterative methods are Newton's method. So we will first look at univariate Newton type methods where you find out the local derivatives either exactly or approximately. Then we will formulate a multivariate secant method, which is an approximate derivative based method or popularly known as Wettstein iterations. Then we will move on to the well known Newton's method and look at its variations like damped Newton method, where you can try to improve the convergence behavior, or we will develop numerically more friendly versions of Newton's method which are called as quasi Newton methods, or with rank 1 updates of the Jacobian matrix. The problem with Newton method is that you have to compute derivative matrix, Jacobian matrix. If there are n equations and n variables, every iteration you have to compute an n cross n matrix, and this can be numerically quite complex if you have thousands of equations. These quasi Newton methods allow you to do approximate update of the Jacobian. So they construct a new Jacobian using the old Jacobian, and this way they save computations. So we are going to have a brief introduction to this quasi-Newton methods. We then move on to solving nonlinear algebraic equations using optimization. Optimization, numerical optimization is a powerful tool which is used for solving nonlinear problems, nonlinear algebraic equations. One of the popular method in this class is conjugate gradient method. So we will have a brief look at conjugate gradient method. This is a gradient based method. There is a Hessian or second order derivative based method, which are called, in this category they are called as Newton's method. We also have quasi Newton method, which are again simplifications of Newton's method or Hessian based methods. So we will have a brief peek or brief introduction to quasi Newton methods, and finally we will look at a method called Lieberberg-Marquardt method, which is combination of the gradient method and Newton's method. So you use gradient when it is helpful to use gradient, you use Hessian when it is helpful to use Hessian. So it is a merger of the two methods, and we will just understand this. Towards the end we will just briefly understand the concept of condition number of set of nonlinear equations. You cannot have one condition number, you can define a local concept of condition number here, which is conceptually similar, qualitatively similar to what we have done for linear algebraic equations. So before we wind up this particular module, we look at two important aspects. One was existence of solution of nonlinear algebraic equations and its relation to convergence of iterative methods. Okay. When we started studying linear algebraic equations, we began with the conditions for existence of solutions. We never talked about this when we started solving nonlinear algebraic equations. Here I want to give a brief introduction to the conditions of existence of solutions and what is its relation to convergence of iterative methods. We will look at contraction mapping principle or contraction mapping theorem. We will apply it to understand convergence of method of successive substitutions. We will also see how contraction mapping principle can be used to analyze Newton's method or Newton-Raphson method, and with this we have come to, or we will come to an end of module 5, which is on solving nonlinear algebraic equations. So we move on to the last tool that will be discussed in this course, that is solving ordinary differential equations initial value problems. So this is another fundamental tool which can be used to attack or to solve the transform problem. So what are the learning objectives? Here, as it is evident from problem transformation module, that many situations when you transform a problem you get ordinary differential equations initial value problems. So this is one of the fundamental model type or equation type which needs to be dealt with, and we have to arrive at, or we have to develop special methods to solve this class of problems. So in the beginning we will very briefly introduce the conditions for existence and uniqueness of solutions of ordinary differential equation initial value problem. This is very brief introduction, and then we immediately move to study of analytical solutions of linear ordinary differential equations in multiple variables. Well, you might wonder, why am I doing this analytical solutions in a course which is meant to be for constructing numerical solutions? Well, this analytical solution part gives in-depth understanding how local solutions behave. Also, this is going to help us when we understand or when we analyze convergence behavior of numerical schemes for solving ODE IVP. So as a background to develop numerical schemes, I am going to solve analytically linear ordinary differential equations given initial conditions. So I will start with a scalar equation, move on to vector equations, and then what is critical here is that I want to relate. So what are these kind of equations? I am going to look at dx by dt is equal to ax where A is a matrix, and then I want to understand relationship between the eigenvalues of matrix A and analytical solution of this differential equation dx by dt is equal to Ax. Then actually looking at the eigenvalues of this matrix, I can qualitatively tell how the solution is going to behave asymptotically as time goes to infinity. So just looking at the eigenvalues, we can analyze the behavior of the solutions, and this elegant part we are going to study briefly. And then what is the relationship of linear equations and local linearization through Taylor series approximation is what we are going to look at here at end of this sub module. We now move to the proper numerical methods for solving ODE IVP. So before that, we need to understand some basic concepts like marching in time. How do you develop a solution? You want to solve a problem, you want to integrate a differential equation from some time 0 to time infinity, you actually do it in small steps. This is marching in time, so we will talk about this. If you look at the methods for solving numerical methods for solving ODE initial value problems, there are two classes. One is explicit methods, other are implicit methods. So we will just have understanding of what is an implicit method, what is an explicit method, and then we move on to study an important class of methods which is based on Taylor series approximation. Popularly these methods are known as Runge-Kutta methods. They actually arise from Taylor series approximation, and this is where I relate it to the approximation theory part that we have done earlier. So we will actually derive here Runge-Kutta methods starting from basics, initially for a scalar case and then move on to the multivariate case. We then move on to the next important method, which is based on polynomial interpolation. So again you will see that the ideas of approximation theory are playing a role when you are actually solving ordinary differential equation initial value problem. So those ideas are so fundamental, they just are everywhere in numerical analysis. So we are going to study methods called as multi-step methods, okay, or popularly known as predictor corrector methods. Okay, we will derive these algorithms starting from scratch, starting from interpolation polynomials, and first for the scalar case and see how they can be generalized to a multivariate case, and then move on to solving initial value problems, ordinary differential equation initial value problems using orthogonal collocations. Well, after that we actually have a brief look at convergence analysis of numerical schemes for solving initial value problems, ODE initial value problems, and what is its relationship with selection of integration step size. When you are integrating nonlinear differential equations, one of the key things is how do you select integration step size. Okay, to get an understanding into this, we have to have some understanding of convergence analysis. So we will analyze, of course, linear ordinary differential equation initial value problems, use and we will apply approximate solutions to these linear problems. We already know their exact solutions, and then we can compare exact solution with approximate solution and get insights. That is the reason I introduced analytical solution of linear ODE IVP in the beginning. Then we will see how this can be extended to nonlinear ODE IVPs. We will look at few concepts which are important in solving these equations, like stiff ordinary differential equations. So stiffness of ODEs is what we will look at, and then finally we will look at what are called as variable step size implementation of these ODE IVP schemes with accuracy monitoring. So these are all involved concepts. Of course, most of the tools that you use today, most of the programs that are available will have these built-in tools. You should know when to use, which one to use, why to use particular choice. If you have a stiff differential equation, you should use a particular tool. If you have variables which have too much difference in their time scales, you should use variable step size implementation and so on. So these things become very important when it comes to in the end I am going to talk about solving differential algebraic equations. We have studied differential equations, we have studied algebraic equations, nonlinear algebraic equations. Just a brief look at how do you solve differential algebraic equations if they are encountered together. Then we will look at a special method for solving ordinary differential equations boundary value problems called method of or a shooting method. So actually you use a initial value problem solver to solve a boundary value problem. Okay, so how this is done? We will look at this method, and then again we will look at conversion analysis of solvers for ODE IVP. So this brings us to an end of this 6 modules, introduction to these 6 modules. So if I want to sum up what is overall learning objective in this course, well, first is you should know how to transform a mathematical problem at hand into a computable form using, of course, principles of approximation theory. That is the almost half the course is devoted to that. Then understand basic properties of different tools, particularly 3 different tools: solving linear algebraic equations, solving nonlinear algebraic equations, and solving ordinary differential equations subject to or given initial values or initial conditions, ODE IVPs. Understand different methods of different numerical schemes for solving these standard class of problems and understand their limitations, so that if you understand their limitations, if you understand their strengths, if you understand how they are developed, you will be in much better position to employ them, use them to concoct a recipe. Finally, what I wanted to learn or to understand is that a numerical scheme is actually like a recipe, and you are going to be a cook who will actually be able to cook a recipe, cook a recipe for a given problem. So you have these fundamental tools, you have some fundamental tools coming from approximation theory. Use a combination of them. First combination of tools from the approximation theory to transform the problem, then you solve the transform problem using standard toolkits that you have. Okay, so this journey is going to be fairly long. It's about 48 lectures, and we begin our journey from the next lecture. Thank you.